Hello, this is Socially Triggered, and this video is going to be a response video to a question that was put in my comments and address a question that one of my viewers had. And I'm going to read that question right now and give you some insight and hopefully answer some of the questions that other people might be having about capitalism and about how, as a young person, they can feel that this system is actually working for them. So I'm going to read the question and kind of give you my 2 cents on it. So can you cover something about on capitalism? The results of capitalism are always moving up. The future for normal people when Apple has the economy of a small country, how can the money be shared around through a system and the pressure of on the young who think they have no future in a capitalist system, the society, sorry. The hard pull of the leftist ideas because they expect happiness and everything now yet for this generation is never seemed so far away. I love to hear more about that kind of stuff. Okay, so that was the comment. And actually, I really appreciate this kind of comment. So basically, the way leftists think and the way that people think about capitalism is completely wrong. And it's generally because what happens is when you're young, you have influences. You have your parents, you have your friends, and then you have your schools. And the problem is right now, the school has such a major role in really creating that foundation for the way people think. Okay, and within the school system is a very left-leaning ideology. They don't like capitalism. They don't understand capitalism, and they generally teach people to hate capitalism and see it as something where it's creating injustices. And that's really what has to be addressed first in order to address this question. Because if you don't know that you're being taught a lie, then you're going to keep on thinking that that lie is true, and it's basically going to lead you down the wrong path. That you're going to assume that the problems that we're facing in society are due to capitalism and not due to something else, which is actually really the case. And some of the problems that we face in society aren't even problems. And I'll explain all this. So first, let's look at Apple. That was kind of the first part of her question. And Apple is one of these big companies. As she said, it has like an economy like of almost like a small nation, like a $2 trillion company. It's huge. And so you think, wow, $2 trillion all tied up in this one company. And that is so unfair that, they could have spread that money across the nation, for example. And that's the wrong way to think about it, because often people on the left think of capitalism as a zero-sum game where wealth is not created. It's just redistributed. Okay, that's the first misconception, that wealth is something that can, like, there's only X number of dollars, and that, either you have this amount here and then this amount here and it gets divided, and there's only that much money and that's it. that's all there is. But that's not how it works. So just because Apple has $2 trillion doesn't mean that they've stolen that from the rest of the economy. It's actually part of the economy. So you can't just, it doesn't divide up like that. It's not a zero-sum game. There's actually growth that can happen within the economy. And that's really important. It's really important because if you see it as a zero-sum game, which is the mistake that teachers make and that people that don't understand capitalism make, well, then you will say, okay, this is a problem where the more money other people have, then the less money we have. But it's not a zero-sum game. Just because somebody else is wealthy doesn't mean that other people are made poor by it. So that's really important to understand, because if you don't understand that, you'll keep on seeing this wealth gap as being a problem when it really isn't. Think of it a better way is what happens with a company like Apple that has a worth of $2 trillion. It's really creating jobs. It's creating opportunities that give it that valuation, that basically inject life into the economy. So instead of thinking of it as stealing $2 trillion, think of it as stealing, not stealing, but creating $2 trillion. And if you start thinking of it that way, then you say, well, oh, we want more companies like Apple. We want more of these kind of companies that can build and create wealth. Because when you create wealth, that money basically is used to hire people. It's used to pay taxes. Like even those companies, when they say, "Oh, Amazon never paid taxes," well, that's not true. They pay employment taxes. They pay all these other taxes that you don't think about. They might not pay corporate taxes, but that's something totally different. And that's actually a smaller tax compared to some of these other taxes that they do pay. So understanding first that it's not a zero-sum game, huge. That hopefully will make a big difference in the way you see capitalism. The next thing to address is, as a young person, what is your future? One of the things that people don't understand, and if you're really an egalitarian, you will have problems with this next thing that I'm going to talk about. And it's the concept that people are equal, right? If you think of everyone should be equal, everyone should have the same, why is it he has more than I do? And if you think about that wealth should be redistributed, and you'll hear a lot of leftists talking about this, that wealth, oh, that guy has $1 billion, really he should be giving it to everyone else, and that way we can bring everyone up. And it sounds nice, it sounds wonderful, but it's not the way to think about it, because we're not equal. That guy probably deserves the $1 billion that he has because he creates that much opportunity, creates that much wealth within the economy. And the thing to understand is there is no such thing as equality. You can't be equal. Nobody's the same. And even if you compare yourself, and this is the big thing that, especially as a young person, where you're at the lowest point in your career, you're really at a very low point. You're entry level. You're kind of like, you don't know anything. And I'm not trying to be disparaging of kids. It's not that at all. It's that you're just at that young stage. You haven't started working. You haven't really experienced work, and you're not earning much when you do work. So you're at the beginning of your career, and when you're at the beginning of your career, you look pretty pathetic. You feel pretty pathetic too, and you're desperate, and your time isn't worth much. However, later in your career, you'll build that experience, and you'll be worth more. So when you look at equality, it doesn't exist between people. Like, so no two people are the same. No two persons are the same. But you're not even equal to yourself. So if I compare myself now to somebody, to myself 20, 30 years ago, I'm making way more money now. And there would be a huge wealth gap between myself and my old self. And I remember when I was first starting to work, and I would take any job that I could get. I would take the worst possible jobs. And it was just not, it wasn't that I wanted to take the worst possible jobs. It was because I had to take the worst possible jobs, because that was all that was available to me, because I wasn't worth it to hire for better jobs. I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the training. I didn't have whatever. So I had to take really bad jobs, and I got paid very poorly. And I just remember at that time, working hard and not making much, and feeling, well, how am I ever going to have a house? How am I ever going to have a car? I like those concepts were like so foreign to me, because I didn't think I could ever possibly achieve those things, because it just, there was no way I could earn that much money. I could do the math. You're making like $3 an hour. There's no way you can afford a house. when when a house is like, at the time it was maybe a few $100,000. There's no way at $3 an hour you could ever afford it. And that was life. That was reality. But time passes and you improve. You can earn more. And that's one of the things that, as a younger person, you have to realize that this is your beginning of your career, and you shouldn't expect to make much money. It's something you have to actually earn, and you have to work your way up. And it is part of life. Um, it might not be the best part of life, but it's actually, you learn a lot in your first jobs that you take. Um, and what happens is, uh, especially when you're young, uh, you're in that in between stage when you're at home, and being at home, mommy and daddy take care of the bills. Mommy and daddy pay the rent. Mommy and daddy, pay for food. You don't have to worry about anything because mommy and daddy will do it for you. And that comfort is kind of like socialism, that you feel like, oh, if somebody could just pay my bill, it'd be really nice. It'd be really nice if people pay my bills all the time, and I don't have to worry about this, and I don't have to worry about all these problems. And what happens is, it's the baby bird kind of situation. Now, a baby bird will sit in a nest, okay? And generally, what will end up happening is, if you keep on feeding that baby bird and you take care of that baby bird in the nest, it'll stay in the nest. It will be like, why should I leave? I'm a baby bird and I'm happy in the nest. And that baby bird will eventually become a fully grown bird, and it'll still live in the nest. It'll never leave that nest because it's never had any reason to leave. Like, it's getting fed, it's being taken care of, and it will constantly stay in that nest. And what'll end up happening is that bird will never learn to fly. So um, that's what happens in a socialist society. That if you have this state, or your parents are kind of those parents that are constantly like taking care of you, you'll never learn to fly. And you want to learn how to fly. It's freedom, right? It's the ability to go out and experience the world and experience all these things. You become much greater than that stupid baby bird stuck in the nest. I hope this makes sense. But the point is, uh, we we think that, wouldn't it be great to have somebody take care of us? But what ends up happening is we become trapped, and ultimately we don't want that situation. So what generally ends up happening with the baby bird is the mother will kick that baby bird out of the nest. And the baby bird at that point has two options. One, it can crash to the ground and die. And that does happen. It really does. Like, baby birds get knocked out of the nest, and if they don't know how to fly, if they can't fly, they crash and die. And that's life. And there's other birds, and most of them will, when they get kicked out of the nest, they will fly and they will explore, and then they will realize that there's so much bigger. There's a bigger picture out there. There's a whole world to discover, and they will be greater for it. Well, as a young person, sometimes it's hard, but you have to be kicked out of the nest. You have to explore and make mistakes. Maybe you fall to the ground. Maybe you pick yourself up and fly. The point is, you got to go through that hardship. And if you constantly are being, taken care of, and become dependent on the state, you'll never get that experience of flying. You'll never get that experience of being something greater than just some stupid bird stuck in a nest. So that's the problem of socialism. Capitalism is the driver to push you out of the nest. It really is a system designed to kind of push people and constantly push people. There's not just one nest that you're getting pushed out of. There's thousands of nests. Because what ends up happening in a capitalist system is that there's new opportunities that are created. And when new opportunities are created, sometimes old opportunities get destroyed. And so that means that you're constantly having to shift and adjust. And that can be very just jarring because you want the safety of the nest. But ultimately, what ends up happening is as new opportunities are created, you're getting new experiences that are beyond, like you're flying and you're going beyond flight. You're going to that next level. So there's a lot of things to look forward to there. And it's really about that whole mentality that has to shift. Um, the problem that we have in our society right now is generally, as I said, teens and young adults. Their only source of the information of the world is from really their friends, family, and schools. And if schools play a big role in terms of what they think of society, uh, well, the people that they're getting that education from are teachers. And those teachers used to be a lot different than they are now. But it used to be that teachers would try to teach you the basics, like math, reading, writing, those kind of things. Uh, but now it's more about social justice that they try to teach you, and they try to teach you all this, crap that you don't need to know, that doesn't actually serve you in any way. Um, but the people that are teaching are generally people that are stuck in the nest. If you think about the type of people that are teachers, well, that's a government job. It's a job that where they really don't work that hard. And I'm not trying to disparage teachers too much, but they have it pretty easy. I've been a teacher. I worked for 3 years as a teacher. I did it overseas, and I was teaching about 2 to 3 times more classes than what teachers teach here. So I know what it is to work hard, and I know what it is to do that job. So I'm not just speaking without knowledge here. Um, Teaching can be very rewarding. It can be very demanding, and but the teachers here have it so easy, and they have it where they they're very coddled within the system. Their unions are powerful. They get a lot of money from the government. They're paid very well compared to the level of education that they have and the work hours that they're doing. They're actually paid very well, and they think that they are deserving. That they're entitled to that pay. Whereas in a capitalist system, you're not entitled to anything. You have to earn it, right? So when you have somebody who is basically a ward of the state, like teachers are, that they think that they're entitled for all this stuff, and that the government will always take care of them. Well, they're not necessarily the best mentors for teaching the virtues of capitalism, which is the complete opposite, where it's very independent teaching, like lifestyle, and very freedom orientated. It's all about getting out, doing something on your own, being an individual. So, they're not necessarily the best mentors, and that can lead to believing that they are right, that the socialism is a good thing. But really, as I said, you're basically a bird trapped in a nest, and you don't want to be there. Um, what I want to kind of finish this with is really getting into what, as a young person, what should you be thinking and what should you be doing? Because one of the things that we have is like when I remember that time. It wasn't that long ago. I'm old now, but I'm not that old where I'm totally clueless about the lifestyles of young people. Like when I first graduated, I was scared. I was terrified. I really didn't know what the opportunities were, and especially being white. Like I'm not trying to say like white people are like oppressed or anything like that, but there were like it was strange at the time that I graduated. There was a real movement for inclusion. This whole idea of like hiring specific groups of people Yeah, it might be even worse nowadays. But like I was missed out. I missed out on opportunities because I wasn't a woman or I wasn't a minority, and it was really frustrating not be able to get jobs because of the fact that I'm my skin color or my gender. Um, and it was very scary. Like I really I didn't. A lot of the jobs said you had to have this much experience, and there wasn't that many jobs. And there was like whenever they would have like a hiring thing, I would see just stacks of resumes that they would receive for these jobs, and I was thinking, well, my resume is probably not as good as any of the other ones there because I had no experience. I had that's the real fear, and it's a very scary time, and I get that. I get that. I really do. Um, but what you have to do is just persevere. Um, there's a lot of opportunities that are being created that didn't exist when I was young, that I wish I could have experienced. Nowadays, you can create your own job really easily. You know, we live in a gig economy where you can do things like Uber or really whatever it is that you're good at. Like if it's like shoveling driveways in the winter or trimming people's lawns or doing whatever, painting people's houses or doing whatever it is, there's a gig economy where you can basically get hired for these kind of tasks. And there's a huge demand for those kind of simple tasks that can be done. So you can create those opportunities. I mean, and it's so easy to do with the internet and with all the the opportunities that are there, where you can post out that you're willing to do this work. And there's so many places where you can find those kind of gig work, and that those gigs might not seem relevant to a career path. Like you're not going to be the next CEO of McDonald's or whatever if you if you paint houses all day. But the funny thing is, getting that experience, even if it's not relevant experience, uh, can fill up your resume where you can use that to get a better job. One of the things that I experienced was, as I said, I did a lot of crappy jobs. Um, One of the jobs that I did was as a phone rep. I worked as a phone rep where I'd call people and basically ask them about some political question or whatever and get their feedback, and I'd record it, and then I would call the next person, and kept on calling people. That was the job. It was a very painful job, actually. You get a lot of people really pissed off at you for calling them. It was painful, but it was a job that paid, and I was willing to do it. But the experience that I got from that was great because it allowed me to say, hey, I have this experience. I can make cold calls. So what happened was I went from, being able to do those phone calls, then I got a sales job where I could say, hey, I can do sales because I'm used to making calls. I'm used to the rejection, used to the that whole bad treatment and also I learned how to mitigate people, like, and how to manage people uh, in order to be able to do the job that I was doing. And that gave me the skills that I needed to do a sales job. And then the sales job gave me experience that I used to start my business. I mean, it was kind of a progression of, and each time it meant I could earn a bit more, and I learned a bit more each time. So one of the things that I recommend is do a bunch of jobs, get that experience, because the experience, you never know how it's going to play into your overall future. Um, and what you want to have, and this is where capitalism plays a role, is you want to have that opportunity to work. And that's why it's really important that we live in a capitalist society where capitalist societies are all about creating opportunities, and they create as many opportunities for job and for work as possible. I was just talking to my brother today, actually. He lives in the United States and I live in Canada. And he was saying that, the unemployment rate in the US is always lower than Canada. And I knew that. And part of the reason why the unemployment rate is lower in the United States than it is in Canada is we have in Canada a very huge safety net, a huge welfare state. It's a much more left-leaning than the United States is. And what happens is when people decide whether or not they want to work, they have a choice. Well, the government's going to pay me X dollars, and I could work for somebody else for the same amount or less. Okay, and generally in Canada, because the safety net is so big, it's actually better to just get money from the government than it is to work, because you can actually earn more, and you don't have to work. It's free money, so it seems great. So what ends up happening is that people, are less willing to work in Canada, and that actually discourages opportunity, because when people work, they get that experience, and they can build up, and they can do bigger and better things. As I said, you got to really think of it, this baby bird example, and the nest, you're constantly getting kicked out of it and getting into bigger and bigger things. Like you're learning to fly, you're learning to go the next level. And that's really the way you should see your career as a young person. And you want a capitalist system, because what ends up happening is you get trapped within a socialist system. You get trapped in that nest, and you really want to get out of that nest and learn to fly. So I hope this has been somewhat useful. I can get more into details of how I built my career if you want. I hope this answers some of the questions that you feel. It will happen. You will be able to afford a car. And I can even teach you how to make millions of dollars. Like, it's not that hard with real estate and with all these things. But it takes time. And if you expect to be given everything today, it's not going to happen. You allow time to progress. You build up the experience that you need in order to get to that later stage where you earn the money that you need in order to buy the house, to get the car, to have all those wonderful things. It will happen. Most people will, in their career, be well off. Okay, most of the wealth gap that we see is not. It's not based on race. It's not based on all these things. It's based on age. Age is the biggest discriminator in terms of the wealth gap. And the reason for that is if you compare yourself to yourself at that older age, you'll notice that you're much better off when you're in your 40s and 50s. You're just going to be better off. And that's because you've gained that experience. So don't regret, or don't worry about where you are now and that wealth gap and all this kind of craziness. Focus on that end goal of building your knowledge and building your experience, and then getting bigger and better things. So hope this is helpful. Thanks for watching. Please comment, and if you have a question that you want me to address, please comment below and I will do another one of these videos. And if you like this video, tell me you like this video. Thanks for watching. Bye.